Morning, everybody. I hope this finds you all well and kicking and doing good today. I've got a subject this morning that it is basically for everybody, but in a different emphasis. When I say everybody, it's like everything in life. Some things apply to certain people more than others, and others can, slide a little bit easier than other people can. But this is pretty well hits us at some level, all of us right between the eyes. One of the things that I've been, the last, couple of years or so since we, moved from California, and we got YouTube on the channel thing here on the TV. Probably most of the TV watching that I do, it's on YouTube. And one of the subjects that they have on YouTube is like all the subjects. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these programs, regardless of what you want to watch. You can find hundreds of them on there. Well, I gravitate to a lot of religious type stuff, Bible teachings, church services, debates, whatever it happens to be. But one of the things that has struck me in the last couple of months is the absolute inundation and frequency of the fall of so many preachers. I'm not talking little no nothing guys like me or so. If I blew it, by the end of the week, nobody hardly would notice. But I'm talking world-class type preachers and ministries that have gone down the tubes in the last few years, and it seems to be accelerating this kind of stuff. Just a couple of names here. You remember back in the late 80s when the stuff really started to hit the fan with, almost everybody remembers those. But now it's got to the point where it seems like a domino effect. We got rabbi bias. Now, a lot of you people might not know a lot of these names, but those, exposed to the, church type environment, they're going to know a lot of these names. Rabbi bias, Tony, one of the best prophecy teachers that has come along in the last 50 years or so. And he's been preaching prophecy and teaching prophecy for about 50 years. He goes down in flames. Brian, guy who started the song ministries there, started in Australia. Then it goes to New York City. He blows it and goes down the drain. Mike in Kansas City, the IHOP prayer, boom, down the drain. Robert Moore, we go on about Joel Osteen, who has what, most people figure is the largest church in America. On any given Sunday, he packs out that arena 3 times, and there's around 50,000 people in those 3 services, for the day. Well, that's a building. Robert, he's in Dallas, and he's got like satellite things. He's got an auditorium that might hold 5, 6, 7,000 or so, but then they've got satellite campuses that they call them, and so forth. And on any given Sunday, 100,000 people will show up in these things. This is monster. This is huge. This is bigger than megachurch type thing. Boom, he goes down the drain. Sexual type stuff. We've got, back in the 90s and the early 2000s and so forth. We got Bill, who at one time had the biggest church in America up there. We got and now the biggest, latest one is, of all people, they're in Dallas. It's just that I sit here in amazement watching this thing. And it struck me, I'm trying to figure, some of them, it's because of sex, both girls and guys. Some of it's money, some of it's power, some of it, there's a whole lot of reasons for every one of them. But then I got to think that there's one common denominator with all of this stuff. One common denominator. That is covetousness. They're not content with what they have. And I understand there's that concept of, we've got to push, we've got to drive for this, we've got to set goals, and the goals have to be higher and higher and higher, which means we have to get more and more and more. And we judge ourselves based on, well, how many people did he have in church last year? Well, compared to how many people you have in church this year. And so the goal is to get bigger and bigger and more and so forth. That's our yardstick as human beings. The Bible has an entirely different concept of that thing. As you can well imagine, it is going to be diametrically opposed to what we are hardwired to do. I'm not talking about the drive for perfection or the drive for excellence, the drive to make yourself better and so forth. I'm talking about covetousness. They're not satisfied with their wives, so they try somebody else's wife or some young girl or whatever. They're not satisfied with the church of 1,000 or 5,000. Now they got to get 25,000, 50,000, and so forth. And so they might do things or say things or compromise here or there because they're not satisfied. To someone as old as I am and has been around this stuff as long as I have, this is absolutely mind-blowing. But it goes hand in hand with what Jesus said in Revelation chapter 3. It goes hand in hand with what Jesus says in Matthew chapter 24. All these warnings that he gave, that in the last days the wheels are going to fall off. And the wheels are falling off. In Matthew chapter 8, I'll just say that, I'll just quote this one, you don't have to turn to it right now because we're going to turn to a lot of them in a minute. But in Matthew chapter 8, in verse 36, Jesus uses an expression here. He says, "What shall it profit a man if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul?" Now, he's speaking in hyperbole here. I mean, he's using such an oddball, ultra-type example. Realistically, nobody's going to get the whole world. That's obvious. But he said, if you could, this is how big of a statement I'm trying to make here. Jesus is, filling in the blanks here. This is such a dichotomy. The whole world compared to your soul? No, it's not going to work. Even if you could get the entire world, it's not worth your soul. So there's the first big tip-off we get. That, self-improvement, that go-getter attitude, the goal-setting thing, that in and of itself is not wrong. And we'll see here by the time we get done how the Bible says that we are to focus that drive. Some people are just innately lazy. Some people just have no ambition. They have no drive. They're not goal setters. They're not self-starters. The Bible is not putting that aspect of our personalities down. It is the object of that drive. It is the object of that goal setting. It is the object that is in question here. we never get to a point that we are really, truly content. Satan wasn't content. You realize what his job was when God created him? He was, to put it in the vernacular that we can understand today, and we can relate to. Satan was, for all intents and purposes, he was what we would refer to as the, what do you call it? The guys that come out, before the preacher gets there, the music guy that sets the whole tone. He picks the songs and how many verses we're going to sing the song and how many hundreds of times we're going to sing the verses and so forth. He orchestrates, he's the worship leader. I guess that's what they call it, the worship leader. And so he sets the tone for the whole thing. That basically was Satan's job when he was Lucifer. He was positionally over the throne of God. He was the centerpiece of God's throne. All worship basically came to him or through him to God. And then one day he just decided, well, I'm tired of being the middleman here. I'll just be the top one. Since all worship is directed through me to God, hey, who needs God? I'll just take it to myself. So he wasn't content with the unbelievable position that God had given him. He was the covering cherub. He was the top piece of the throne of God, as it were. But he wasn't content. Adam and Eve, they weren't content. They had everything. And it wasn't just the things that they had. The biggest thing in my mind was the things that they didn't have. They didn't have sin. They didn't have guilt. They didn't have remorse. They didn't have regrets. They had none of this baggage that we live with. But they weren't content. They wanted to be as gods, knowing good and evil. Well, how did that work out? It was a bang-up job. And look at us. You see, that aspect of our personalities, it seems to be hardwired into us from an early age. Little kid, when they learn how to talk, 1.5, 2 years old or so, 2.5, and in there, at some point, somebody's going to ask the kid, "Oh, well, how old are you?" Well, they're never 2. They're never 3. They're never 4. They're 2.5. Because they have to be a 2-year-old. No, 2-year-old, that little kid stuff. A 3-year-old, no. 4-year-old, no. I'm 3.5. I'm 4.5. It seems like a little thing, but it's indicative of a big thing that is wrong with us. We are never content. Little kid says, "Hey, I'm 2 and I'm happy about it," or "I'm 3 or I'm 4. No. We're always stretching. We're always looking ahead. We always want a little more. So I'm 2.5. I'm 3.5. We get to be preteens, adolescents, 6, 7, 8, 9 years old. What are we looking for? We want to be teenagers. We can't wait to be a teenager. We're not content with being, 7, 8, 9-year-old. No responsibility. Well, we might have some chores, take the garbage out or mow the lawn. But as far as the real big stuff in life, we're immune to it. We don't worry about mortgages at that age. We don't worry about car payments. We don't worry about insurance. We don't worry about health. We don't worry about any of this stuff. But we're not content. We get to be a teenager. What's the next big thing out there? 16, so I can drive. So you're not happy with being, 13, 14, 15. No. When I'm 15.5, I can get my learner's permit. And after that, what's the next biggie? Well, it's either 18 or 21, depending on what state you're in, I guess. To be able to vote, be able to drink, go to the bars, whatever it happens to be. No matter what stage we are in life, we're never content. And then, of course, you get to the other side, you get to be 70, 80 years old or so, and you can't do 90% of the things you used to do. Well, now you're not looking so much forward, you're wishing you were back into your 20s again. So there doesn't seem to be a stage in life that we're content and happy. And that's a horrible thing when you think about it. You would think maybe that half our lives, that the first half, looking forward to that midpoint where we start to decline, we could be happy and content with that because we're vibrant, we're strong, we're alive, we've got all of our faculties, we're full of vim and vinegar, we're ready to go. But no. And then when we get on the other side on the decline thing, then all we do is reminisce and wish and bitch and gripe about, well, we're not back there like we were when I was a kid. We are never content. And when you think about a life spent in constant, perpetual, everlasting discontent, that's a horrible thing. I've spent most of my life in that mode. All these things that I just mentioned a second ago, I went through that same sequence. Exodus chapter 20. Exodus chapter 20. There's a little section of verses here, and they comprise 10, not suggestions, not what ifs or not hope fors. They are 10 commandments. One of them, verse 17. This is the last one. This is the 10th one. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass. We say donkey today, or burro, or something like that. Nor anything that is thy neighbor's. All these preachers that I mentioned a little bit ago, they all blew it on one of these aspects. They coveted. They all had wives. They all got enough money. They've all got enough power. They've all got enough notoriety to serve 100 lifetimes. But they weren't content. They weren't satisfied with it. They wanted more. The elusive dream. The goal that's always just beyond our reach and just beyond our grasp. If you got $1 million, well, you want 10 million bucks. You got 100 million bucks, you want $1 billion. If you can run the 100 in 10-2, you want to be able to run the 109-9 in track. If you're a gymnast and if you can pull off a 9-8, a 9-7 most of the time, your goal is you want a 10. Diving, the same concept. That struck me because we got the Olympics coming up another month or so. But we're never satisfied. We're never content. It's just our whole being is consumed with either more, faster, easier, better, something. But it's an elusive thing because once you get what you thought you wanted, there's always another thing in front. So the elusive dream becomes the quest. And after a while, the quest becomes our whole purpose in life. Because we never stop and smell the roses or smell the coffee or whatever it is you like to smell. We never enjoy what we have at the moment. We might check the box off and say, okay, well, I got that one. Next. And we move on. We don't just sit there and say, thanks, God. This is great. I'm loving it. I appreciate it. We don't even take that small moment. They say, okay, what's next? Psalm 37. Psalm 37. This is hard for a lot of us to really conceptually get. Psalm 37, verse 10. And that reads, a little that a righteous man hath is better than the riches of many wicked. Now, you would think that that was written by a guy who didn't have anything. Because, you know, we always say that, oh, yeah. The guy who has nothing, who's poor, he's always saying, oh, well, it's much, much better to be, you know, poor and humble and so forth than it is, you know, rich and proud and all that stuff. No. The guy who wrote this had more money than you could shake a stick at. He had more money than he knew what to do with. David was one of the richest guys in history. He basically funded the tabernacle and the temple that Solomon built. It was David who got all that. Well, we're talking one of the most grand buildings in the history of the planet. Solid gold inside and out, all the furnishings, gold, and so forth. Precious stones. The value of that temple was incalculable. So when David says, a little that a righteous man hath is better than the riches of many wicked, he's not talking from the concept of he's, you know, bummed out because he doesn't have any money. So the quest defines us. It's our purpose in life. It becomes all-consuming. It is the concept of more and more and more and more. And once you get the more, it's never enough. It's that elusive dream that Satan put into our hearts when we fell. You know, sometimes God uses a couple of different illustrations here. Well, one we're going to get to in 1 Corinthians chapter 12. But God paints pictures, let's say. The world is a picture. We are pictures, as it were. Or you can look at it, God writes a symphony, or he writes a book. Well, all pictures are composed of brush strokes with varying colors and hues. Not every stroke of a picture is the highlight of the picture. Sometimes you have got to have background. You don't really focus in on the background, but the background is necessary to highlight the showcase. You know, we've all seen the fruit pictures. You know, you have a table, there's a basket, and then there's the fruit on the basket. and there's, maybe an apple or a banana or a peach or something that is, the top one where that little ray of light coming through the window and so forth is striking that apple or the banana or whatever it happens to be. And that is the focal point. But in order for that focal point to be the focal point, to do what it's intended to do, you have to have all the other background stuff that goes with it. You have to have the muted, faded type pictures or, strokes and so forth. All the colors can't be the same vibrancy. They can't all be the same intensity. You've got to mute this stuff. You've got to dim it down so that certain parts can be accentuated and other parts are just, they're in your consciousness, but you don't really see them and notice them. But it takes that to make the picture what it is. It's like a book. When you write a book, not every word is the highlight of the book. You've got to have a whole bunch of thes, ands, ifs, so's. You got to have all these other contributing words to make the big words stand out. It's like a body. In 1 Corinthians chapter 12, Paul goes on about the body. He's trying to explain the concept of the church. The church is a body. I've got a body. Here it is. It's sitting right here. You can see it. I can feel it. But it is composed of trillions of little bits that you can't individually see. So Paul makes the analogy. He says, not everybody in that body can be the head. Not everybody can be the eyes. Not everybody can be the hands. Not everybody can be the tongue of the mouth. These are the highlights. These are the stars of the body and so forth. But he said, in order for the body to function, he says, the mouth can't function by itself. You need a tongue in there. You need saliva in there to keep everything lubricated so, your tongue doesn't stick or the cheeks don't stick and so forth, and that you can articulate and you can speak clearly and succinctly. The eyes, look at the complexity of the eyes, just so that you can see. There's dozens and dozens of components in there that have to all work in sync. You don't see any of them. I don't know what my retina looks like. I've never seen it. I know that it's in there. The cornea. All the other various components that go with the eye that are behind the scenes doing their job. That's what it takes for the eyeball to see with. It's not just a stupid little orb in here. It's a multi-complex organism that has to work in sync. Somebody has to be the armpit with that stupid little skin tag on there. That if you're a girl, that every time you shave your arm, you got to worry about that skin tag getting ripped off or bleeding or so forth. But that's part of the body. It's a necessary part of the body. Not the skin tag so much, but the armpit. You got the hair that grows, you got the stink, and you got this, but it's part of the body. Who wants to sign up and say, oh, yeah, Lord, you're making a body today. I get it. And you need a whole bunch of parts. And you're asking for volunteers. I volunteer to be the armpit. Nobody does that. We all want to be the mouth or the eyes or the hands or the feet or something. But the feet, somebody's got to be that stupid little pinky toe that's all gnarled with that stupid little nail on it. And it maybe has a bunion or a big callus or something on the side of it. Somebody's got to be that, but nobody's raising their hand to volunteer for that job, are they? Somebody's got to be the large intestine. And with all that that implies, nobody's content. And if God appoints you to be part of the armpit, part of that little toe, or part of that large intestine, how do you react? I know how you react. You're looking at the guy who's the head, or the tongue, or the mouth, or the eyes, or the hands, and you're saying, oh God, I wish that I was him. Why did you make me thus? And so our whole lives are colored and affected and ruled by that concept. We get angry with God because he made me thus. And so our whole lives are not spent thanking God that, hey, I'm a part of this body. Without me, without those sweat glands, for instance, in the armpit, something's going to get backed up. Something is not going to flow right. Something is going to get stopped up, and it's going to cause a domino effect on other parts or other organs of the body. So, hey, I might not be glamorous. I might not be beautiful. I might not be, the top of the line. But boy, oh boy, I do serve a purpose. I am worth something to God. But we're not wired like that. There's too much outside influence that affects, the way we think, we should be, our goals and expectations. There's just too much garbage in our lives. We're never going to be content with being what God wants us to be. And unfortunately, God does need some armpits. He does need some wonky little toes. He does need some large intestines. First Timothy, chapter 6. First Timothy chapter 6, beginning at verse 5. Now he's in the middle of a conversation he's having about a certain subject, but I just want to hit this particular aspect of it here, beginning in verse 5. Perverse disputings of men of corrupt minds, destitute of the truth, supposing, this is the part I want to hit on, supposing that gain is godliness. From such withdraw thyself. This is one of the things that is hardwired into us from the time that we can talk. Gain is godliness. That's our barometer for how good we're doing, if we're successful or not. Gain. That's why I started this whole thing about, these guys aren't satisfied. These fallen preachers, for the most part, they're not satisfied with the life God gave them. And as soon as they got some notoriety, power, prestige, fame, and so forth, now their eyes are starting to look around for something better. Supposing. In other words, that means it is not necessarily so that gain in and of itself is godliness or good or proper. Sometimes the armpit just should be content to be the armpit. He'll be a happy armpit. He'll be a completed and a fulfilled armpit. He'll go through life thinking, all right, hey, a sweat gland just came out. I still haven't figured out the purpose of the hair, though, on the armpits. That's still, maybe a medical guy can sort me out on that someday. But if you're happy to be the armpit, if you're not looking to be the eye, or the mouth, you can live a happy, contented, fulfilled life. Now, the eye might look down on you, the mouth might look down on you, but inside of you, you're contented, you're happy, you're fulfilled. So Paul is trying to make a point here that gain in and of itself is not necessarily godliness. So he goes on in verse 6. He says, but godliness with contentment is great gain. Godliness with contentment is great gain. And for some reason, the influence of the world overshadows that aspect of Christianity here. And it's sad. It really is. Let me insert something here real quick before I get done. The Ten Commandments, and we hit that back in Exodus chapter 20 there. Verse 17 was the covet part. And it starts out, thou shalt have no other God before me. And then it goes on about murder and lying and cheating and stealing, the whole bit, And a lot of us, because we haven't committed murder, let's say, well, we judge ourselves against some poor schmuck who did commit murder. Maybe we haven't been convicted of theft. We don't steal things. But we might have a tendency to look down on somebody who does do those things. And it might not be so much as a looking down on it as it is patting ourselves on the back that we didn't do that. There's a subtle difference there. None of us escape sin because we haven't done a particular thing. A lot of us, we don't do certain things for various reasons. Number one, we're afraid. There's no way I could pick up a knife and go, just kill somebody, slit a throat or something like that. Some people do. They're hitmen, or they're, in passion thing, or they're, committing a crime. But they've got no problem at all taking a knife and slitting somebody's throat. Some people can take a gun and shoot somebody. Happens every day. I'll be honest, I'd be too afraid to do that. I can't bring that up in me to do it. Does that mean I'm a great guy in my mind? Let's just see here. Overt theft, bank robbery type thing, or coming up with a pyramid scheme. I'm not sharp enough for those, but a lot of people, they get a lot of money on pyramid schemes and so forth. And they know they're hurting people. They know that they're devastating families and generational type stuff here, but they don't care. They want what they want, and they're going to get it no matter what. So some people, they don't do certain things because they're afraid. Other people, they just don't have the opportunity to do it, or they don't have the money to do it. Now, I'll be very, very honest. When I started off by putting most of these preachers down, most of it is for sex. I mean, let's just be clear. I have to say this. I don't have a string of ladies throwing themselves at me. So I'm not even, that aspect of life is gone for me. I don't worry about somebody putting the moves on me, putting the hit on me, or anything else. These preachers do. The level of temptation that these guys either fought off for a long time or finally succumbed to, in a weak moment, I get that. The level of temptation that they have is off the chart. Doesn't matter about looks. It doesn't matter about anything else. There's a power trick going on here. Satan wants to get that guy off or away from the pulpit. He wants to besmirch his ministry. He wants to tear him down. And in the process, he's helping to tear down the image and the reputation of Jesus. Because the world looks at a fallen preacher like that and they say, oh, well, he believes in Jesus. And that's all Jesus can bring to the table? Are these fallen guys like that? No, these guys are under a weight of temptation that the likes of you and me can never even begin to imagine. So if I, at the end of the day, I say, oh, I didn't succumb to sexual temptation, I don't get to pat myself on the back for that, because nobody's lining up to tempt me. Easy. So a lot of times we do not do certain things just because we don't have the opportunity, or we're afraid, or the circumstances just aren't right. But Matthew chapter 5, Jesus anticipated this little response because the Pharisees always were going about how great they were because they didn't do this particular sin and they didn't do that particular sin. In other words, they never committed the act and so forth. So Jesus is talking to them one day. And in Matthew chapter 5, verse 27, Jesus says, ye have heard that it was said by them of old time, thou shalt not commit adultery. One of the 10 commandments. It's all the way back. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife. But I say unto you, that whosoever looketh on a woman to lust after her hath committed adultery with her already in his heart. So the Pharisees are going on about, hey, we didn't do this, we didn't do that, we didn't commit the act. And Jesus said, hey, whoa, 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 whoa. If you looked at that girl with lust, you've blown it. You notice there's a big, big difference of looking and lusting. Look at verse 28 again. He says, but I say unto you that whosoever looketh on a woman, all right, no harm, no foul there. I mean, you can't help it. I mean, if you got eyeballs, you look. I mean, you just can't help but see something there. It's that next phrase, to lust after her. Monster difference. You can look all day long. You can appreciate, she keeps herself in shape. She's got a good looking body. That's wonderful. Good for her. More power to her. Took a lot of hard work, a lot of dedication, and so forth. I appreciate what God has made here. There's a big difference of that and lusting after her. And unfortunately, that's where most of us end up. It is the lusting part. Looking is fine. It's when we switch and morph from the looking to the lusting. Philippians chapter 3. Philippians chapter 3. Verse 7, 3:7. Paul says, but what things were gained to me, this is, before he got his head sorted right and got saved and so forth, but what things were gained to me, those I counted loss for Christ. Yea, doubtless. He says there's no doubt in his mind here. This is a truism. I count all things but loss for the excellency of the knowledge of Christ my Lord, for whom I have suffered the loss of all things, and do count them but dung, that I may win Christ. So that rat race that he used to be on, that hamster wheel that he used to be on, the attainment of more, better, higher, so forth, different. He says, now I count it all but dung, that I may win the approval of my Lord Jesus Christ. For the verse 14, Philippians chapter 3. I press toward the mark. You want some go-getter type stuff? You want self-starter type stuff? You want set goals type stuff? There's nothing inherently wrong in that. It's just the object of these things that he's saying is wrong. I press toward the mark of the prize of the high calling of God in Christ. That's what he's pressing for now. Not a bigger congregation, not a trophy wife, not more money in the bank, not a better car. I press toward the mark of the high calling of Jesus Christ. And finally, Hebrews chapter 13, verse 5. Let your conversation be without covetousness. And be content with such things as ye have. Why? For he has said, Jesus has said, I will never leave thee nor forsake thee. Doesn't matter what condition you're in. State of your health, state of your finances, state of your looks, state of your station in life. Doesn't make any difference. If Jesus is with you, that supersedes everything. And if you don't think so, just ask the 3 Hebrew children. They went into a fire. Did it bother them? No. Why? Because Jesus was with them. Ask Daniel when he had to go into the lion's den. Did it bother him? No. Why? Because Jesus was with him. Ask Jonah when he got thrown overboard in the middle of the ocean, sunk to the bottom of the sea, swallowed up by a whale. Did it bother him? Jesus is with him. Be content with such things as you have. For he said, I will never leave thee or forsake thee. Heavenly Father, I thank you for these promises, because I'm just like everybody else. I've lived my life in this state of constant agitation, this constant state of not appreciating the things that you've given me at the moment. Always wanting more, always wanting better, always wanting something different, and never appreciating and never being content with the things that you've given me. I can say truthfully now, Lord, for the first time in my life, I really am content. To be honest, there's certain things that I'm still bummed about. Condition of my health, the effectiveness as a preacher, teacher, and so forth. I still struggle with that stuff. But the main everyday things, I love my wife, I love my house, I love my car. I'm content with everything that you've given me. I can really, truly, for the first time in my life, say that I am truly content. And what a difference it makes, Father. Oh, you know. So, Father, I pray that you would speak to each and every heart, because everybody is at some point in this destination. They're either young and looking to get, better, or they're looking, they're old and they're looking at, wishing they were younger. We're either coming or going. We're either winning or losing here. So, Father, bless each and every one where they are. Help them to realize it's never going to get any better. Be content with such things as you have. And then when God does, if and when, that he wants to move you on to something more, you can appreciate that one too. Father, forgive us for the sin of covetousness. Forgive us for the sin of not being content. Forgive us, Lord, for not appreciating all the things that you give us to enjoy, and yet we don't appreciate any of it because we're always looking for something new and improved. God help us in Jesus' name.